Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Today on the show, I interviewed Dawn of Delights by Dawn. She's an attorney turned baker, originally from the United States, but now she calls the south of France home. We talk about how she made this big leap over to France and how her life has changed, as well as her cooking since moving. Welcome to the show, Dawn. How are you today?
I am doing lovely. Thank you for having me.
I know you are a new transplant down in the south of France. You've been there for a whole year now. How are you feeling about your new life in the south?
I absolutely love my new life in the south. It is wonderful. And every day I give thanks that I'm able to pack up from where I came from and to be here living this life.
I love that. I want to go back to the beginning of where you came from. So talk a little bit about where you're originally from and what brought you to France.
Okay. I came here from Atlanta, Georgia. I'm originally from New York, moved to Florida, and then went to college in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's where I've been for the past 30 years. However, I'm an attorney by trade, but I also had a baking business because I've always loved doing that. So I had a baking business, a successful baking business for the past 8 years in Atlanta, an online baking business, specializing in alcohol infused cakes and cupcakes. And during the pandemic, we went remote as far as attorneys being in court. I had been floating with the idea of coming back to France to visit the South. I had been in Paris and did workshops, and I was just learning how to make all kinds of French pastries, which I've always been infatuated with. And that's where the bug hit me. So during COVID, I just started looking up places in the South, maybe. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to go, I might as well see if I can get a certification. Found a culinary pastry school in the South, closer to Spain and Cap d'Agde. And applied, got in, took a 6-month leave of absence and went to pastry school for 3 months and then traveled around France and a couple other countries for the other 3 months. And that's when my decision was firm that I would be moving to France.
I love that. It's so brave of you just to go for it. You just went to France. You're like, I'm going to study pastry even more. And you were a lawyer by trade.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think this gives people so much hope because so many of us are in jobs that we really dislike and we have these other side passions, but we don't want to look stupid. We don't want to look crazy because like lawyer, baker, like how did you feel about that? Did you have some feeling like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this or can I make enough money to support myself?
No, I kind of, sort of, but no. At my point in my life, and I'm over 50, that really wasn't that much of a concern. There was, of course, going to always be a concern of the unknown of how I'm going to make money. And so I am a little lucky that I'm a lawyer because I'm able to do maybe some consultations. But the great thing about that is that's not what I'm concentrating on because I don't really want to do law. So my concentration is the baking business. And I knew that as long as I was able to do a couple little things legal wise while I figure out how to open my business here, I would be okay. And I just didn't want that hustle and bustle. I didn't want to work as many hours as I did. I didn't even, I don't even want to do the baking business here the same way I did it there. I want it to be easier, smoother, and I want it to be more about adding to the quality of my life as opposed to trying to hustle up money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to enjoy your life and money is just, a byproduct of that, but also you don't have to work so hard. That was the whole point of moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And talk a little bit about what it was like to study at a pastry school in France.
So I knew when I first came to, when I came to France for pastry school, I didn't know anybody. So when I moved here in Nice, I didn't know anybody. So I went to pastry school, and knowing that I was going to go, I started, but it was in English, but I started kind of learning French a little bit. So that was kind of not really a concern because I knew that the classes were going to be in English. But I don't know. It's just something about France from the first time I came, which was like maybe 3 years before that. I don't know. It's just the spirit of France in me just does something. And honestly, when I got to the school, met some great students. They were all younger than me, learned so much from those young people and people from all over the world. And it was phenomenal. It was definitely not something to take lightly. It was, I did the pastry program. So I was there every day in the morning from about 9 till about 1. And it wasn't a cakewalk. I loved my chef, but it was hard. It was difficult because French pastries are not like US pastries. They're not one dimensional. So there are a lot of layers to it. So there's a lot of work. And so I gained a lot more appreciation for it and loved it. And then, the people that I met from all over the world. So it was great. And it taught me a lot.
That's so funny. That's not a cakewalk. I like that.
Right.
No pun.
Right. No, or maybe.
So talk a little bit about some of those differences. Like, for example, maybe there's a lot less sugar,
Yes.
or the way everything's
so everything is very elegant with them. Everything is smaller. It's not over the top, how we decorate. And then sometimes it's pretty and it's great, but they're just not like that. They definitely use less sugar, 50% less sugar. They use a lot more fruit as a way to add flavor and taste. They use a lot more nuts, a lot of hazelnuts and almonds, and it's just layers. I mean, if you notice, with the exception of a few little things, but for French pastries, any type of gâteaux, cakes that they have, it's never just a cake with icing. It's a layer. You may have a layer of cake, and then there's a layer of fruit, some kind of coulis, and then it may be encased in mousse, and then they may have the glaze. It's never one layer. So you have to learn how to make each layer, and then you have to learn how to put it together and assemble it for it to then look as gorgeous as it does, as elegant and as simple as it is. So it may look simple, but it's not. And the ingredients here are definitely different. The flour here is definitely different. So you have to learn which flours, because they have numbers to use because I also learned how to make breads and croissants, which to use for baking pastries and which to use for baking the breads. And I have discovered, being here and trying out a lot of my recipes that I use in the business from home in Atlanta, here, using the exact same recipe, I now feel like the sugar is even processed differently here because it is not as sweet as it was when I made it in the US with the same exact ingredients.
That's so interesting. It really, the flavors are so different. I know a lot of people even say, I can't eat flour in the States. I can't eat flour products. And in France, they can.
Yes.
I mean, things are created differently.
Yeah, well, and I have friends that say that too. And I'm like, look, I guarantee you, take a little piece, but you're going to be able to. I've had 2 friends that were gluten issues or didn't eat bread. And when they came over here, they were eating baguettes, croissants all week. And that's because even the way they process the flour is totally different than how it's processed in the US.
What's something you really wish people knew about, like French cooking, French pastry? What's something you think people should know about it that really is missed a lot?
For on a whole, or you're speaking about maybe Americans?
I'm thinking more American side. Like what you would say.
Honestly, I really, really, really want them to know that they can enjoy decadent, great tasting things without it being loaded with the sugar that we use, which is incredible because when I went back to visit and I went and I got some stuff, my taste buds have changed. And now I realize how much more sweet and sugary the stuff is in the US than here. And my taste buds, I don't want that. And since we already have an issue in the United States with sugar and obesity, I really wanted, and when I did come back the first time, I tried to make desserts for people so that they can taste it. A couple of desserts that I learned that kind of had like an American flair because my chef had taught in the US for maybe like 6 months. And some people were like, oh my God, they were able to appreciate it because it wasn't as sweet. And then, you still have some people that are like, oh, it's not sweet enough, but that's the point. You don't need to have all that sugar. So that's what I wish people would realize is that you don't need all that sugar. Using fresh fruits that are in season can help give that great taste without it being too sugary.
Yeah, I completely agree. My taste buds, when I eat things back home, I'm like, oh my goodness, so much sugar.
Oh, when I went back for the 2 weeks, I was miserable because like nothing appealed to me even when I went out. Really, there was very few things that appealed to me, even on the menus. Food wise also, I just was like, I hate to say it, I was kind of like, yuck. So.
Yeah, it definitely, your taste buds change. I say that after a good month, you're like, oh, wow, this tastes very different than I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the truth.
And talk a little bit about your business now, Delights by Dawn. How has your cooking changed? What you're offering people? Talk about it.
Okay, so Delights by Dawn in the United States was an online baking business. I did online orders. I also was, my business was one of the first businesses ever to have any type of alcohol infused baked goods that were sold in a major professional sporting stadium. So my business, I was in the Dome before it became Mercedes-Benz. I sold my baked goods during all the Falcons home games. And then from there, I went to the Hawks games. And then from there, I went to NASCAR. So it was very successful. And it was basically, I specialized in alcohol infused cakes and cupcakes.
Very cool.
So, and I did a lot of festivals, a lot of the drinking festivals that were really big in Atlanta. I was I was there. Everyone looked for that pink tent. Coming over here, that was a lot of work. And again, my lifestyle is so different. I don't want that type of work. But what I do want to do is I want to try to find a way that I can offer the American desserts to maybe some of the expats who miss the American desserts here. Because honestly, I mean, no shade to France, but people, if they are not an American, trying to say that they're making an American cupcake or an American cake, it's not. They really don't have any idea that that's not it. So I would really like to be able to offer that to Americans here in the South that may miss it, but also offer it because now I know that even offering that, it's not going to be as sweet to French people so that they can kind of also discover our desserts. I'd like to do a fusion of the American and an American and French fusion of desserts. And I'm not sure yet how that would be as far as selling products. I'm more geared to wanting to do the quote unquote culinary workshops, which I love doing when I travel to a different country. So I really want to do more of the workshops, either teaching French people or tourists that come and they like to do culinary stuff, or even some of the expats here on learning how to make some American, desserts, simple ones or American cuisine. So I'm kind of gearing myself towards that with the occasional selling of products for maybe special occasions or maybe, for a week out of each month. But I don't want the everyday stuck to being in a shop everyday type business.
Yeah, definitely. That's why you moved to the South for a slower pace, more relaxed,
yes.
Coming from a big city.
Yes.
And talk a little bit about some of the challenges of moving to France and starting your business. What were some of the biggest challenges along your journey?
So I think for me, with the challenge with the business, because I did a little research before, that's the lawyer in me. And so France is, I will have to say that with some of the things that they do, France is 15, maybe even 20 years behind us in regards to technology and things. So I was what was called, and I'm also a legal expert in this arena, a cottage food baker, meaning that my business, I was able to legally run that business out of my home. And they don't allow that here in France. So that's the first challenge, is that I would have to find, and I know that they do not have as many commercial kitchens like we have in the US that you get to rent time to use. They don't really have that concept here. So I'm trying to find ways that I can actually bake in a legitimate kitchen for me to be able to, sell my products without me having to get, or at least until I get my own kitchen, because the goal is to get my own place. Even for teaching, I'm going to need to have a kitchen. And that's my goal. So that's one of the challenges. Also trying to figure out which business entity that I need to do here. And then keeping the brand still alive in the US, but then kind of also having it here. So that's kind of like, how do I do that? So it's a lot of stuff to do. And so that's where I'm at right now, where I'm going to start to look into that. I want to just come here the first year, live, enjoy it, get my routine, get everything that I need to do paperwork wise. And then now I can really start trying to figure out what does the business look like and what it is that I have to do. And I think for me, because I had a business, there's a specific, I think, license that you have to have here. But I think because of my qualifications and because I actually had an actual baking business in the US, I might have to bypass taking that program. So hopefully, from what I've researched, I should be able to bypass that. But if someone didn't have the experience, they would have to take a program here to get this license, like a certificate, like a license for them to even deal with the food industry. And the food industry here is a lot more strict than the food industry in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've found many differences since moving and all the things that you expect to be easy, but are a little more complicated.
Yes.
Definitely. And talk a little bit about like some of the biggest things you had to change in your cooking. I mean, other than sugar, obviously, like, did you have to change your whole process of how you did things after learning the French way?
No, because it's really two different ways. No, I won't say the process, because I actually, when I went back after school, I was over there, selling some French desserts and some of the things that I came up with from going to school. It's more absolutely going to be more of the ingredients. That's the biggest thing. Like, there's no self-rising flour in France. They don't have that. But for me to make a red velvet cake, which is one of the most popular cakes that I've sold, or cupcakes, I have to have self-rising flour. So what I have to do is, whenever I can't find a specific ingredient and it's not easily, obtainable here, I have to figure out how to make it or come up with it from scratch. So then I have to figure out how to turn all-purpose flour into self-rising flour so that my product will come out the same, or at least very, very close to it. And I've done it, and it's been great. It didn't change how it came out at all, but it's more the ingredients and figuring out when you're lacking in certain ingredients that either is not offered here or you can't get here. What am I going to use to replace that ingredient? That's the biggest challenge.
Yeah, you have to get creative with your ingredients.
Absolutely.
And talk about what you would go back and maybe tell your younger creative self. Obviously, you've evolved a lot with your baking, with how you're getting creative. What's something you go back and tell your younger creative self?
Wow, that's a good question. My young creatives. Wow. Wow, let's see. Because the old me would say, I would go back and I would say, Dawn, you should start, you start this at this age. But I really feel like things happen when they're supposed to happen. So I wanted certain things to happen at a certain time and it didn't. And then now it's happening and I now get why, because this is the time that whatever I needed to go through is I'm prepared for it, or it's a better time for me. So for me, my creative, oh, wow. What I would say in regards to that, what I would say is this, that I would say to Dawn, go back, is I would have started traveling and exploring earlier in my life, which I think would have also helped with maybe adding on to my niche when I was doing the business in the United States, because traveling, and whenever I travel and I go to a totally new country, I always try to see if I can find a baking class, specifically baking, but I also do culinary stuff just to learn the differences, things that I could incorporate. And if I probably would have traveled a little earlier, would have gotten some of that in a little earlier, then maybe I would have been able to add that on to my business and make it a little bit more international in the United States than it was. And I had just started doing that. Then I decided I'm going to leave.
Yeah. It's crazy to look back and you just don't know how these experiences are going to change your life forever. I mean,
Yeah.
you probably didn't imagine yourself living in Nice one day.
No, not at all. No.
Yeah.
Well, I always said, even 20 years ago, maybe even 30, I always knew I would not live my latter years in the United States. I knew that. My family's from Belize. I thought that's where I was going to go and live, but I can't live there because it's still a very developing country. There's really not much for me to do. And I'm still very active. I'm not at, quote unquote, the beach bum stage where I'm just on the beach. And that's pretty much what that life would be. There's really not much progression there that you can progress. That's really for real retirement. But France was never on the map. France was never on the map until 2019 when I came for my birthday for a whole week in Paris. And it was a week of culinary baking adventures and workshops. And I fell in love. And that's when I said, I got to come back. And folks were like, you need to visit the South. They knew I liked the water. They were like, did you go to the South? I said, no. They were like, you need to go to the South. And 2 years later, I was like, okay, let me look into the school and specifically if there's one in the South.
I love that. It just all kind of dominoes. That's how it works. We're just always trying to evolve and seeing how the pieces fit together.
Absolutely.
And tell us a little bit about the best advice you've ever been given.
That I've ever been given?
Yes.
The best advice that I've ever been given. Wow. I tend to be the one giving the advice. I'm trying to think the best advice that I've ever been given. I guess for me, it's going to be, and I can't remember if it was my aunt, but the best advice was a simple one. And it was, be who you are and don't change who you are for anyone or anything. Just be you. Don't care what anybody else thinks in regards to what you may want to do with your life. You just be you and you do what it is that you want to do that will make you happy.
I think that's great advice. And I think easier said than done because a lot of people do get wrapped up in what others think and family approval and things like that. But you're much happier once you just start living for yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely. And I have to honestly say, I've always been that person that I really didn't care what people thought about me. I had my own, I compete with myself. I don't compete with others. And when I kind of set my mind to doing something, I've just kind of always been driven like that. But yes, you do sort of get caught up once you get older and then you have family and, and kids and all that kind of stuff that kind of, will interfere with that, but never to the point where it was totally washed away, not in the back of my mind. But yeah, that's just kind of, with this move, I was like, I can't be gone I can't plan this 5 years from now. And when I went back, I said, I'm moving to France within a year. And I did. I went back in 2021, September. I got back here in September of 2022.
Good for you, right? When things were getting a little bit better with the pandemic.
Right.
Good choice. And how would you define creativity in your own words?
I think creativity is when you are doing something that makes you happy. And I'm not talking about a superficial happy. I mean, creativity is when you are producing something, no matter what it is, writing, baking, whether you're doing it for a business, whether you're doing it for yourself, whether it's whatever. But it's, to me, when you are the most creative is when you do whatever that is and you're in a total real state of happiness to the point where nothing else matters. You're almost kind of in like a meditative state and you really feel a calm and a peaceness within your body. That's what I think creativity is, which is why when some people say, hey, paint this, or some people start, because I paint also, when people start paintings, they're doing it because of the love for it, because of the way it makes them feel. Then when it sometimes turns into a business and you're asked to pump out stuff with a timeline, and that creativity gets lost because your purpose for doing it somewhat gets lost. So that's what I feel real creativity is when you are doing something for your true purpose.
I like that. That's a really good definition. I ask all my guests that question, and it's pretty different every time, but it's true. A lot of times we can lose some of the true creativity, the true passion once we start making money or we have people like pushing us to do it their way. And it's important to keep that little piece of you, just doing it for the sake of doing it.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time, with the baking business, I was like pumping it out so much that, I wasn't loving it as much. And that happens, especially when you turn your creative passion into a business. You may get to that point. So either you're going to stop doing it and kind of regret it later on down the line, or you may switch it up and change it so that you get that feel back again. And I think that's what happened with me going to school to learn the French pastries and then coming over here.
Definitely. You need to switch it up. And even if you're doing the same thing, just put a little twist in it, go study in a foreign country or whatever, learning the same thing.
You have to bring that passion back to it. You have to find a way to get your passion back. And then once you get it back, then you now know from the previous situation not to allow it to be taken away from you.
Yeah, it's all about challenging ourselves in new ways. And what are some of the next projects you're excited to share with the audience, some things you're working on? What's next for you?
The biggest thing is going to be the how I'm going to develop the business over here. That's the biggest thing. Part of that baking world, but more on the legal side, I have a book, and I have been procrastinating. I have a book that's going to be more for people in the United States. It's for cottage food bakers, because I kind of became a legal expert on the rules and the regulations. So I have a book. It is pretty much finished. I just got to really get it out there to the editor and everybody. That's going to be kind of like a legal step-by-step on what they really need to know and the steps they need to take to become a home baking business in the United States, because that's non-existent here. So I'm working to finish up that book. I'm past the deadline I gave myself, so hopefully in the next couple of months. And just to do more traveling. And honestly, I am looking at maybe doing a subscription of virtual teaching classes, like the culinary classes that I would want to teach in person, also to be able to offer them virtually, but a participatory type class, not just watching me. Like I want, like kind of like a class, maybe like on a Zoom, and everyone can see each other and we're all cooking at the same time while I'm teaching. So that's something that I really, really would like to do and see how that would work out.
Very cool. I love all those ideas, and the book sounds very exciting as well. And where can people connect with you online, check out your work, your website?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The website's in transition, even though I do have one, because I'm no longer their products, but there's going to be some merchandise on that soon. And that's Delights by Dawn. And everything I have is under the business name. I'm very, very active in regards to when I'm baking or even my everyday life on Instagram. Dawn, Delights by Dawn, very active, especially recently. I had a moving abroad video go viral on TikTok. So TikTok is more tips for people, and my tips of moving abroad and things that are different between the United States and here on TikTok. But I'm very active on Instagram. And I also have a YouTube channel that does, it's about eating, traveling, and baking. So you get all three of those things in one. So, and everything is under the name Delights by Dawn.
Wonderful. I think those are a lot of people's favorite things, eating.
Exactly. Because I'm a foodie. So whenever I go to a restaurant here, I review stuff. I review everything and I will say, hey, this is a good restaurant if you want a burger. And some of them have gotten to know me. So I do it all the time.
I love that. People want that. We all don't know what's going on in these new locations. So
exactly.
We need the real deal. Well, thank you so much, Dawn. I really appreciate you sharing your story with us today, and I can't wait to see what you'll do next.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.